lawsuit brought upon. It's a civil suit by Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
And they're now, now it's even getting worse. They're literally, Stacey Abrams is looking for a new job, by the way. She's going to try to run for mayor. But they're also trying to not lose their law licenses. So they've actually sent petitions out. I believe that they've sent requests stating that they don't deserve to be sanctioned in the prosecution, that they were following the direction of Stacey Abrams, and that they need to be allowed to bring forth these courts. So it's going really bad for the prosecution office, and they haven't even come down with the judgment yet.
But how do we, right? Like, there's like 4 or 5 people on this stage who said a year ago that this is exactly what's going to happen, right? And while the left and a whole bunch of people were saying, "Oh, the walls are closing in. We've got him this time. Look at this criminal. The walls are closing in." And yet, we told you a year ago exactly how this would go. And then what happens? Is it that we're mind readers? Is that we have a crystal ball? No, we have a crystal brain that works and that looks at things without all the bullshit noise around it, and looks at the heart of things, and just simply common sense, like a 5-year-old would look at shit. And that's how we're able to predict all this stuff, because it's just common sense. The rest of you are fucking wilded out with all sorts of dopamine drips and all sorts of emotional ties to your leadership, etc., and you come up with this wild QAnon, blue anon bullshit. And it's so fucking annoying, and I'm so happy to see this going this way. So you all shut the fuck up, finally.
Did you guys see the elderly abuse that they were committing against our former president, Jimmy Carter? I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified. You know, number one, I'm still on the fence with the legality behind, I'm still on the fence, and I don't understand the legality behind influencing somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia to cast a certain vote in somebody's leaning. I just don't. I mean, I wish an attorney would come on this stage and kind of walk me through understanding if that's even legal. But it's very disturbing to see that man just shuffled into wherever he was and pulled out of his nursing home or his memory care, and basically put, to go and vote for Kamala. And then they came up with this bullshit that it was his dream, to vote for Kamala. He's had dementia for over a decade. Like, what are these people talking about?
Do we know the GoTV numbers yet?
The what?
Get out the vote numbers.
So right now, the early ballot, it actually is, so right now it looks like more Democrat, and most of them, to be fair, are coming from Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, that are coming in from Pennsylvania. Those are the ones I'm checking in. Georgia just released theirs, or just started theirs. So we'll have to see. But the early returns are actually showing up more in favor of Democrats. But when you start breaking down, particularly just watch Pennsylvania, because that's going to be a key indicator. That is just something I'm checking on. But to be fair, stop coughing or go on mute when you cough. When we watch these, you can kind of gauge how the rest of the country is, but there's something to go through. I think Democrats are 68% to 38% or something like that. It's a widespread margin, 58
but
to 38.
How does that gauge against previous elections, right? Because we know they're going to have more. But how does that stack up against 2020 and 2016? Those numbers back.
Well, we do have a higher number coming in on the early returns for Republicans, so that's really beneficial. We are aware that Republicans tend to go through. Trump doesn't tend to underperform per the polls, so everybody's kind of watching it. And now, again, it's all speculation, because you're trying to go through and think, oh well, maybe all the Democrats voted for him. Well, maybe not. Maybe that didn't happen. Maybe Liz Cheney somehow or another in Philadelphia managed to sway conservatives. I doubt it, but maybe. I'm sure there's a few that just hate Trump. But, I mean, not in any large number. So the Republican early returns, I think it's a little too soon to say it's favoring Kamala. But what I'm hoping for is that as more and more filter through, if that gap narrows, then I would say Pennsylvania is probably going to go for Trump. If that gap widens, or stays the same, then I'm going to say it's a toss up at this point. But what I'm actually just watching for is to see those percentages of the early returns come in. If they start going narrow based on Republican and Democrat, then I'm going to say chances are that I'm just going to hedge a bet and just say Trump's got that in the bag.
Abby, do you know anything about like the how the party apparatus is working with the campaign?
Yeah, I mean, so Brad, on the Pennsylvania returns, it's my understanding that you're just talking about who's actually the ballots they've received,
Correct.
not counted. Like they haven't actually seen how
I'm just wondering.
those votes are. It's just
Correct.
whose votes they've received, like by registration. So we don't
Correct.
know if they've switched over or how those Dems actually voted yet.
But I mean, if we see that gap shift, Abby, we should say that it's a nail biter at the very least. I mean, it's not saying Trump's got it in the bag, but I would just say if we see the Republican returns creep up to within, I don't know, I'd say 15, maybe even 20. If they creep up within under 20, I would say that Trump's got a very good shot that Kamala is in a lot of peril in Pennsylvania. And of course, this is just me following the data that I have available to me right now because I'm just one of those geeks that likes tracking this stuff and getting into the weeds. And I'm very curious about Pennsylvania.
I am literally door knocking there this weekend. And it's a funny story. Dana Bash is following us around and doing a story on it because they can't believe that there's actually Jewish Republicans. But we're door knocking in some very affluent Jewish areas in the main line. So, and I'll have a much better understanding in a few days what the temperature is there. I do know, as I've been chatting with people, that there's some really strong blocks of areas with Trump signage in pockets of Montgomery County and Chester County. So it'll be interesting to get the answer on that. And Adam, to answer your question, in a lot of states, like I know in Nevada, you can designate someone to be voter assistance, and you have to give that authorization for voter assistance. Because I think did you also see the video of the old woman in a nursing home and the granddaughter is like moving her hand to check off what the granddaughter wants? So
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that video.
That is so incredibly violating.
yeah,
And
but
we'll
you
definitely
can,
miss
but they
out.
did. Democratic
Abby, wait.
legislatures passed voter assistance, so that exists.
When did they do
You were
that?
in the room. I think you were in the room when this happened. There was definitely two other people in the room. But Norm, the great Norm, the only liberal Democrat left, told us one night, and I might have spoken about this in room. He told us one night as friends that he absolutely takes his mother's vote, fills it out for her, takes his eldest daughter's vote, fills it out for her, and and I said, and one other person, his aunt, and I said, well, do you ask them, what they want, who they want to vote for? He goes, no, I know that they want to vote for Democrats, and he fills out 5 ballots and he drops them off in the state of New York every year. I mean,
It's kind of funny,
that's
but
fucked up.
the good news is that he's supporting Trump in this election. So if
No,
he does,
he's not going to vote for him though.
I think he will.
I think he will too.
I think he will.
It seems crazy not to.
Norm said he was going to vote for Trump the other day.
Yeah, I think he
Did
is.
he really?
But
He's been
it's
saying that for months.
I
No,
think
he's
he
been
will.
saying that he was not going to vote for Trump. He was saying that he was going to vote for Biden up until about 2 months ago, and then he was saying that he's
He's
not
switched.
going to vote on the presidential. Wow, that's really great news.
Doctor, I think most people are closeted Trump fans, but when it comes to this app, they appease to the to the Democratic Party. So the fact that anybody is filling out anybody's ballots without having a conversation with them is absolutely disgusting, and it's quite interesting to hear that somebody with a political background, a campaign background, would actually come on stage and spout such disgusting statements like that, while also trying to debunk that the last election was stolen. The hypocrisy and the irony is real. So, but aside from that, he is
I'll tell you
appealing
something.
to
Oh,
the
go ahead,
Democratic. Oh, sorry, love. He's just appealing to the Democratic mob. I think most people on here, I've seen a lot of rooms where a lot of black men are stating that, you know, they're going to vote Trump, but while their wives are touting for the Democratic mob, they tout with them. So let's hope and pray that when they're in the privacy of their voting box, they check the right box. I'm just tired of everyone being such a coward about it and not being able to come out and have an honest conversation, but one step at a time. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, I was going to say, on the Norm note, I want to say probably around those college protests, I really started seeing Norm be openly embracing towards Trump. But it was several months before that. And I've been listening to him very closely for a while. And I do believe, you know, to Abby's point, that he's going to be voting for Trump. But as far as, you know, black men and, you know, what you mentioned, I think that a lot of black men, and I'm not speaking for all because we're not a monolith, but I think that a lot of black men that, you know, don't necessarily run to Beyonce concerts in crop tops, you know, really are looking at the pandering and the way that, you know, Kamala has incited division within the black community. And she doesn't have a plan for the black community. She simply doesn't. She does not have a plan for the black community. She doesn't have a plan for black men. She doesn't have a plan for black women. I mean, this whole bullshit, I'm going to give $1 million loan, forgivable loans, and, you know, $20,000 to black men. To me, it's like, well, what are you going to do? Put it on a lottery system? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, she's complete. And who's paying for that? Who is paying for that? We are in the hole. We don't need to be giving anybody any type of handouts. I think that anybody promising people just free money for breathing, we need to be looking at them with one eyebrow up and one eyelid down, looking at them sideways. Okay? We are trillions of dollars in debt. Trillions. Trillions.
Don't worry, she's not gonna do that. She's full of shit.
Okay, but my whole point,
Loan has to be paid back. So
she said forgivable loans.
that just means free money. That
Right.
just means we're
So,
giving-
right. So, like I said, to my point, Brad, we're trillions of dollars in debt. I also just saw that Blackstone or BlackRock or whatever the hell that company is their assets have reached almost $12 trillion. That's a conversation that needs to take place, you know, in the legal community about the antitrust laws in this country. People should be looking at candidates who are talking about that. I don't know why this is crazy.
They don't care. This is something that the Democrats and the Republicans who have been in office, they do not care. But I have heard some Republicans talking about BlackRock, and Vivek Ramaswamy had a really good take on it. And going to one of the congressmen too, gave a really good speech about how they're going and BlackRock, because of the amount of money that they have under management, they're making policy in this country. But the thing is, it's our money within our retirement system. It's our money that they're doing it with, using it to do the same thing that is killing us. And to the point of what we just talked about, and you guys have been hearing me say this for 3 years now, black men are the next great white hope. They're the only hope that we have for this election. Not the only, but they are going to pull us over the finish line. And it makes such a more of an impact because we're supposed to hate them and call them the N-word behind closed doors and all of this nonsense. And yet they're coming over in droves to the Republican Party. And it really is, I think that could be something that's actually healing to the country. The only group it's not.
Doctor, you have screaming white liberal women like we have screaming black liberal women. No, this is not a racial thing. I think it's better to say we have more black men coming to the conservative side, my friend. There's no white hope. What do you mean by white hope?
They're
insanity.
There's something called the Great White Hope,
Oh,
and black men are the great hope for white men. They're the people who are going to pull us over the finish line
what is happening?
in this race. And one more thing, I'm sorry to say this, Mrs. DeGroot, But I'll explain it if you like. But the most, as much as they're doing such a good thing, the most dangerous political group in America, the most dangerous voter in America is the black woman. They are the most dangerous, the most entitled, the most absolutely radicalized group of people in this country. And they need to be stopped. And their men going out and switching sides is the first step in that. And they should submit. They should really submit.
I'm going to turn this back over to KK because I think she's been trying to come back off the mic and finish her Brett Baer thing. So let's give it back to KK.
But they should submit. Go ahead, KK.
Submit to me, doctor. Sit down.
I will, right now.
Thanks, Daddy. Okay, so a couple of things. One of them being, going back to who's voting for Trump. I think there is a silent Trump contingency that won't say it out loud. They won't say it full in their chest. They won't do that, but they're just going to silently just go, yeah, check the box and keep it moving. The second thing is I put a link in the chat to a YouTube with Mark Halperin talking about the actual data that's come in, and not in particular who's leading, who's not, whatever, talking about the number of registrations that are coming in for each party compared to the past two presidential elections. And there's been a huge increase in said very important swing states for Republicans, have a huge increase of registered Republicans, new Republicans coming in, which is huge and is very important. So I think those two factors are going to, that are really mixing up and churning the tide as far as this positive energy going forward for the next couple of weeks. Now, I want to get back to the actual audio of the interview. There's about 7 minutes left, but for those who haven't heard the audio today, I don't want to get too far away from it. So next we're going to play, I love the fact that the producers of Brett Baer's show had a commercial queued up, ready to go, just in case, because they knew Kamala was going to say that President Trump he's the one who talks about the enemy within, the enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn American military onto the American people. I loved the producers had that queued up, and he went directly over to it. It was a thing of beauty. So let's listen to this exchange. It gets very uncomfortable, so I'm going to kind of let it play a little bit. But he's trying to debunk this propaganda that Kamala is trying to progress.
We asked a question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest man. No, it's true. We don't even think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing. So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
He was asked about that specifically.
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you, you didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He's talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like this.
KK, forgive me. Pause that real quick.
Can I just?
My understanding is Kamala is threatening to silence our First Amendment and is wanting to put in policy for fact checking and going after after
Chicago
people like
Election
Elon
Commission should be
Musk
disbanded.
because
All Dominion
she
voting
doesn't want
systems should
people
be
to
returned to
actually
outsourced.
have
Taxpayers
the
pay
right to
hundreds
voice
of
their
millions
opinion,
to
rather their
outsource
opinion be
digital
wrong
election
because
fraud.
they proclaim it to be harmful. Is there proof that Trump threatened to actually beat Americans down? I'm curious.
I've never heard it. That's why I've listened to it a couple of times. But interesting enough, I think there was a legislation passed just this past week, basically saying that the U.S. military can be used inside communist United States. I'll have to look that up. I've had too much other stuff going on, but
Are you referring to the posse comitatus status?
I have not.
They were only talking about the security for like after the election. I think that's what they were speaking on. Like after the election, like is it going to be an easy transition, or is it going to be? Is everybody going to be okay with the outcome?
Can't even see.
Understood. Okay, so Trump was just making sure there was peace because just like when he lost, even though he believed it was unfair to Joe Biden, Donald Trump left peacefully. We can all agree with that. He's just speaking about in the case that whether it be liberals or conservatives, that there is a peaceful transition of power. Correct, Kratos?
Right, correct.
Okay, awesome. So unlike Kamala, who wants to actually silence our First Amendment right. Got it. Okay, KK, you can.
No, I was just gonna say, this whole narrative about Trump disrupting the peaceful transition of power is ridiculous. The man left early. The man left early. He didn't even go to inauguration. He left before the sun came up on the West Coast, jumped up onto his plane, and he was in Florida before the inauguration even started. So I don't think that people fully understand what said transition of power and is and when it does happen, because Trump left very peacefully. So I don't know why people continue to peddle that narrative. But go ahead, KK.
Yeah, Mungo.
Because they've been allowed to.
It's wild to me because I've never heard him say that he would talk about turning the American military on the American people.
Never.
Hasn't he joked around? Here's I'm just playing devil's advocate and just trying to remember back.
Why don't we just let KK finish playing the clip? And then
Shut up. Sure.
And then we can just see what maybe Kamala's referring to.
No, you're very low because you're on music.
The U.S. military now is authorized to kill Americans.
Oh, damn it, I forgot my thought. Never mind. I'm going to play that whole thing back again because we stopped it. I didn't want to stop the flow. I think the flow of it. Oh, my point was this. She says, listen carefully. She says, he has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking up people because they disagree with him. This is a democracy, and in a democracy, the President of the United States and the United States of America should be willing and able to handle criticism without saying he would lock people up for doing so. So let's just be mindful of going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. Wasn't January 6th a peaceful protest? Yes. He
weapons.
Yep, he talked about locking up people because they disagree with him. Did the January 6th people disagree with the outcome of the election? Yes. And then this is
projection is wild.
Yeah, and she's like the President of the United States. That's when she got angry and started pointing. I do remember that. So let me go back just a little bit so everyone can kind of get the flow, and I'm going to let it go just to this back and forth because it's probably the most contentious portion of it. Okay, stand by.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded. I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest man.
Welcome to the
It's called weaponization of power. So,
Brent, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that was not
we need you to
what he has been saying about the enemy within that he's repeated. When he's speaking about the American people, that's not what you just said. No, that's not what you just said. In fairness and respect to you,
talked about
you didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military and the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He's talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he locked people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
It's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump, you call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You said now
He's unstable. He is unstable.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's
Let me ask you this.
Okay, so I want to stop it there. Do we want to talk about that portion? We kind of played it on because now she's going to talk about, now we're going to talk about Joe Biden. So anybody want to speak on what I just,
I do. I've got, oh no,
in a democracy,
because we've got lovely Aaron, our friend in the Brooklyn chat, and I'm going to take this on. What he is talking about are the pro-Hamas, militant and violent rioters, not even demonstrators, rioters that we have in our streets. He's talking about the people that are blocking traffic, that are cementing themselves to the ground when emergency vehicles can't get through. They are showing up and attacking Jewish students on campus. They're attacking people at their synagogues. They are violent. They are destroying buildings. They're destroying property. They are destroying property when people are in the property. That's what he's talking about. And there's a point where the National Guard has to come in, which some governors have done, where it is so disruptive to communities and to civil living. And that's what he's referring to. And you're going to find the majority of Americans want these people to not be able to get away with this in their cities and in their counties. That it is not peaceful protest that he's talking about. And that's what people have been begging their mayors and their county commissioners and their governors to address when it happens in their cities. And Aaron, you want to fight me on that one, you can come up and tell me why you think that it's acceptable what's going on and what happened at Columbia University was acceptable, and that the police shouldn't have come in, and if necessary, the National Guard. And this is not Kent State. This is very different.
yeah, Abby, that would make sense. I'd never heard that before, him directly in that context, but I'm sure you would know that's what the context was. So thank you.
Yes, we're talking about the military. I see his comment in the chat. And can we remember when you had the Ku Klux Klan that were, I'm sorry, there's an echo, someone's mic is open. When the Ku Klux Klan decided to show up at black churches, and what our prior presidents did and who they brought in to protect citizens. I mean, this is not something that's so new to America, but we have violence in our streets, and that's got to be controlled. And you have to have civil order, and that's what he's talking about. This is not peaceful protests.
Piggyback
I
on
have.
that. You can
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you go, sir. After you. Okay.
I'd like to piggyback on what Abby says. That is not the only quote unquote peaceful protest that they've been doing. Let's go to the old Minnesota riots. Let's go to the riots they had in the Bronx before the road, where they were looting they were so out of control, they were looting their own communities. You shop in, your family shops in, you grew up in, and if you can't control yourself and you're out of control, somebody should control you. And like you said, and what you said again, that was an excellent point, was they're not protests, they are riots. You know, That shit is ridiculous. Come on, control that shit. Call the military.
And death, and remember in Minnesota, what you're talking about, there were deaths there were Molotov cocktails thrown into buildings and people died. And they weren't protesters, they were rioters. There were people's businesses that were burnt to the ground, looted and destroyed. There wasn't a protest. It wasn't a peaceful protest. It was a riot. And then you have to bring in law enforcement and whatever means you can to stop the rioting and protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of your state and of your city and of your country.
Well, I find it ironic that Aram's critiquing you and criticizing about you when, well, after Joe Biden changed his diaper for the first time in the White House, they put up razor wire, barbed wire, and we're doing so. Like I believe the First Lady wanted to selectively choose which soldiers in the National Guard were going to be selected because they didn't want Republican ones guarding the president because they were fearful of that. And then they had a ring, and actually, if you went around D.C. at that time, it looked kind of like we were in a war of sorts. You had soldiers just basically going through, and then of course you had the photo up of the First Lady acting like a twit, handing out cookies to soldiers that were basically cooking in the hot sun trying to seek shade. But again, I think, Abby, to the point, there were autonomous zones taken by armed individuals. I mean, the left had no problem saying that we should have brought out the military for the January 6th. They wanted that to be invoked. But they, now you have the left saying, oh, this is horrifying. But in those autonomous zones, those were armed people seizing land and threatening American citizens, saying they were not part of the United States. Technically, the president could have probably ordered military to go in there and remove and re-secure those areas.
Absolutely. If the local, especially if the local law enforcement wouldn't take care of it themselves. But going back to what you guys are talking about, one quick question, Kratos and Gabby, what you're talking about in Fordham, and what you were talking about in Minnesota, was that this year?
This was maybe 22.
After October 7th or no?
No, before October 7th. No, this was years prior. Maybe 2 years.
What were they protesting?
They were all protesting the George Floyd.
Oh, that.
Yeah. That was crazy.
Oh, absolutely. That was wild. And
you pick a football coach. You want a football coach. This shit is ridiculous. You can't make this stuff up, man. He let it happen.
Yeah. I do remember seeing videos of him shooting paintballs at his own citizens for going outside during COVID. What a piece of human shit. Just that's a side note. But what we really need to do, and I do really like the Trump, recent Trump campaign videos, where there's no part of Trump in it. It's just a clip of Kamala babbling her nonsensical popsicle stick rhetoric. And then he goes, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message. It's one of the greatest campaign tricks I've ever seen. But on top of that, really the only thing that you need to do if you're Donald Trump in the America First campaign is, number one, make sure you address the economy and immigration over and over and over again. And then number two, you have to make people remember these videos, these 30-second videos of our country up in flames during the George Floyd riots are very, very powerful. And people, because of a national PTSD or whatever it is, people have forgotten what happened or filed it away in a little part of their brain that they try and move past all the time. But when you put out videos like Augustus, our black friend Augustus, like when he makes videos that string together all of these events, they're only 30 seconds long or a minute long, but that is the ultimate cry for a person's vote. Having them see and remember viscerally through video what happened over the last 8 years, and bringing them back to that moment for just a short period of time, it's very effective and very powerful, because if you think back over the last 8 years, the absolute abuse that the Democrats have done to our government, using our legal system, using the rules of the House and Senate, using the FBI and CIA to spy on their political opponents, all while unmasking thousands of Americans who happen to be Republican operatives, Republican donors, Republican people. When you see it and you see a video of it, or you're reminded of it, it really puts it and sets it down deep in your mind. Okay, this is not just about what's going on in the 24-hour news cycle right now, because that's fluid. But what has happened over the last 8 years needs to be crushed. It needs to be completely eradicated. And that's why when Trump says, I want to eradicate the federal education system, or I want to dismantle the FBI, we're all like, it's not a bad idea, which we would have never said that 10 years ago. But anyway, I've talked too much, but we really need to think about it.
No, you're good. So I was in a store right now, and as many of you know, I live in LA, and I just got into a conversation with a young black man about, just the election. He's 24, and one of the concerns that he was having about the Trump support was apparently some incident that happened, I guess, in Orange County at a Trump rally, and there were several young black men that were getting beat up by a bunch of Trump supporters. And what I was trying to explain to him was, one of the first questions I asked him was, well, were those young black men Trump supporters? And he says, well, that really wasn't clear. And I tried explaining to him that he has to look at the full context of a lot of these situations, because what I'm seeing is that the Democratic Party, anytime you have Trump supporters that are conjugating, especially here in California, they are sending people in to cause chaos. They did it over in Koreatown when Christian nationals were, protesting against that spa that was letting men into the women's restroom. I mean, we've seen this time and time and time again. So be very careful when you listen to these stories and you hear these sound bites and people are quick to point the finger at identity. Actually look at the full context as to what actually happened.
And Chief is a son of a bitch.
Okay, I'm going to pick back up where we left off. This next portion is, and honestly, Brett Baer kind of laid this up, segued on when she started saying Donald Trump, that he called Donald Trump, he's misguided, he's unstable, he's not well, he's mentally not stable. So that's when he brought it up. She validated it, and then she dated it again. He acknowledged, and then he started with a question, which was a question that everybody wants to know the answer, but no one has actually answered her. So that's where we are in this interview.
Yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You called Donald Trump. You called Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
He's unstable. He is unstable.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people. Joe Biden is not on ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
He talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After
is.
George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. Donald Trump.
Okay.
Wow.
She didn't answer the question. It was literally, and she talked over him so many times at the beginning of that segment. You know, if you kind of even listen to her timing of phrase, like she is so looking to interject, and before he can finish a sentence, she already has a comment before, and then when he finally says, "When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?" Crickets. Then I watched him from the Oval Office's Situation Room. He had the judgment and the experience. I mean, she even messed that up.
That doesn't speak to cognition.
Exactly, but it also doesn't speak to. She would have to. She looks foolish because everyone in the world can see there was a mental decline, right? Everyone, and even when Brett Baier brought up, well, Clooney even said, and how long after that, she's like, no, I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump. And this is how it goes. I'll play it again in just a second. She said, or Brett Baier said, I understand you met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns? Again, crickets. I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump. She would not answer the question because history will show when the books are written that she lied about it and she doesn't want to be in that position. There was no truth behind it. So before I play that again, did anyone want to have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, given the number of times she's interrupted him in this interview, she's convinced me now that she's black.
I have a comment. This is love.
That was dumb. That was a good one.
That was not dumb.
That was good.
That was good. But hold on.
But I mean,
I get it. It's like being in a weird room in Clubhouse. She didn't spend any time listening. She'd rather talk instead of hear the question. And I think that was the issue. Like she wanted to.
That's true.
She mentioned judgment. She mentioned judgment. Now, what judgment? He's got impaired judgment. He didn't know the step was there when he fell. You know, he don't even know what year he's in. He's still selling soda pop and fighting people in the schoolyard. Like, judgment. This guy's, something's wrong with him.
So, you know, that's one of the things that I feel like people are kind of, I don't think they're missing it, but they're not really bringing it to the forefront of the conversation. She's pandering to those type of women. Those type of women in those wig rooms, those AKA HBCU sorority type of women that are able to do her heavy lifting because she can't do it herself. She can't say anything that's impactful and that's going to deploy the sentiment of, you know, those actual black women towards weaponizing that sentiment, towards nagging the shit out of black men for our votes. Okay, this is just what it is. I mean, she's playing a game. That's why it's so important for her to align herself with blackness so that she can use those same said women to try to weaponize what they do best in wearing people down to nag people for votes. That's literally the playbook that this woman is taking out of.
So this interview wasn't for, she's actually trying to target like people who are on the fence about Trump. She's trying to target independents, and this was like her chance to do that. Obviously, it's a bomb. I think this is also the part, KK, where Brett says that her staff was starting to wave off and wave their hands in the air to try to stop the interview or move on or try to give the indication that this is wrapping up soon. You know, she, like, again, this is first stage talking. She doesn't know how to address any question. She only has a regurgitation moment, a plug and play candidate. You can call her a DEI hire, you can call her anything she wants to. She's just plug and play. And she's basically being told, this is what you say, nonstop, this is what you're going to answer to, and this is going to be it. And it's anything Trump. Every issue is Trump. Like you said it yourself, KK, and right out said it. You can't run the country because Trump was running for office. You can do your job as the vice president because Trump was running for office. Immigration failed because Trump was running for office. That is the crux and the sentiment of this interview. And if anything, she actually brought more people over to the Republican side or who will support Donald Trump. And again, she's having, well, now that we're on second week, this will be another shitty week for Kamala in a row. And this close to November, this is going to hurt. She's had a really bad week last week, and she looks like she's on pace to have another really bad week this week.
Why do I get the feeling that this conversation is going to happen again in the future, and we're all just going to be out on a 1-800 complaint line, going all the way up to the inauguration?
Yep. Because we've lost the election, you're saying? Or we've not won? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a definitive winner. I think we're going to be lost in a chaos cloud, and it's going to go to some Supreme Court in the same way that George Bush did. It'll be so contentious, and we will all be on needles thinking that this is hardcore election fraud. And I got to say, the censorship platform and Google and Facebook are totally automated now. If it's a conspiracy theory to call it an election fraud and being an election denier, you will be censored. Your account will be taken off. X is the only open platform to complain on. And when Kamala wins, X will be shut down. It'll be total fascism. It'll be Kamalism.
So, Love, are you saying that a House of Cards is going to take place? I'm not sure if you've seen that TV series, but what you've have you seen House of Cards?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So are we going to have a moment where Frank Underwood and I forgot with the Republican guy, where it went 3 months before a president was declared? Is that what you're claiming is going to happen?
I'm not sure, but I just know that censorship and election deniers and election fraud, that's the new censorship. The V word was the big censorship during the lockdowns and all through Biden, etc. But now election deniers are going to be the new censorship topic. Therefore, Kamala's going to be installed. You won't even be able to complain about it.
Well, we have evidence of that, right? We have evidence. Remember the quote-unquote big lie? And now you can't even make an argument for what we all saw on the election day in 2020. I'm not saying Joe Biden stole the election, but there was a whole bunch of horseshit going on in a whole bunch of different states. And if you go to look that up now, or if you save those videos of the Senate hearings back then, they are all page 404 not found. When you go and look back and you click on the links that you might have saved like me, I know better now. Now we have to download it to our devices, put it in a thumb drive, and hide it in a fireproof safe, because the internet is not safe for us anymore. The internet is not safe against the narrative.
Look at the link I put in the chat. It's called Oversight Board.
So the idea of there's going to be a declared president. This is where I think I.
What makes you say that?
So I'm extremely pessimistic. You can ask KK when it comes to these elections. I don't think Trump's going to win. I'm going to tell you right now. I am the fact that they would even play around with that. No, because the idea of giving conservatives the opportunity to fight when there is an unknown would be the dumbest mistake that you could possibly make. I would never do that.
I agree.
What you do is you shove her down the throat. You continue to say that we are extremists. You continue to say that we are a cult. We're brainwashed. That would be the dumbest thing in the world. Would be to unify us, to actually come and make a stand across the country. We've never done that. We didn't pull a George Floyd on January 6th. There were people who flew into D.C., but we did not have massive protest across the United States. No, we did not.
Are you saying, are you saying that they won't do it because they know we'll all come together and protest?
Yes,
Oh,
that'd be
you
the
missed the
dumbest
group.
thing in the world.
No, the dumbest thing in the world
We're
would
not
be to
gonna
let them.
protest. We're gonna lose our mind. All I'm saying is this would be the easiest thing for them to do with the least amount of backlash. Is they're going to put her into office. I'm extremely pessimistic about Trump getting into office. I believe he's going to win the popular. I believe he's going to win the electoral. They're going to drive that woman in. The dumbest thing you could do is give us a reason to unify and come together.
I don't think. Wait, can we just clarify what she's saying? Because in one sense, she's saying that they will not risk having us all come together and get mad about the election, and in the other sense, she's saying they're going to install Kamala. I don't understand.
What I'm okay. Can you hear me? I don't know. My phone is spazzing out. It seems. My thing is, Love had said they're going to not declare a president. That there is a probability that we're not going to have anybody declared possibly for a couple of months, like a House of Cards, right? And we all see House of Cards. It's a great TV series if you haven't. Where we have no idea who the president is for X amount of time. Okay, I don't think that they would do that. I think Kamala's going to be elected in because we as conservatives, what did we do when Joe Biden won? Not a fucking thing, right? We swallowed our pride, we moved on, or we bitched on the internet. What did we do? Like, honestly, doctor, what did we do?
So listen, I put a link to the. Hold on a second. You get
Close to 1 million people went to Washington on January 6th. If you look at my PTR, you can see that it's not a lie and that not 50,000
I'm aware of
people.
that. But nothing
So that's
took
what we
place. Donald Trump still went home, nothing happened, and we moved on. That's the point I'm trying to make. That will happen again.
Well, look, you guys have to go to this oversight board committee and look to see who's running the censorship regime in this country now because it's fully automated. So all the videos, all the complaints that will get put up on all the outside platforms on X will just immediately get deleted when Kamala is announced president. This is about a communication control of the communication system in this country. And Facebook and Google have fully implemented algorithmic automated deletion and censorship.
So there's some reason to be pessimistic. You got these names I'm going to start throwing out there, and some of you should learn them pretty quickly. So you got Mark Elias, you got Bob Bauer, you're going to have Dana Remus. Who else is out there? Maury Reagan, Josh Sue or however the fuck he pronounces his name. And Gupta. You got to deal with that idiot again. These because they're the Biden Justice Department of the civil and human rights officials. These are some of the people that are going to be actually holding up if Kamala loses. They're actually going to be overseeing in different regions hundreds of lawyers and probably more like thousands in a lot of key areas, and they're already set to offer a bulwark to be aggressive to challenge any kind of Republican victory, particularly in the key swing states. This is alarming to see this kind of advanced legal team that's actually being supported in part by Biden's DOJ and others. And yes, there is some nervous that should be granted to people to understand that the scope of this legal team and the funds that are available to it, because there's a war chest with it, attached with it, that this could pose a problem. The Democrats will bitch on one hand about democracy, but they will do everything they can about how they say every vote must count, but now they're wanting to pick and choose which votes are going to go on there. They're upset that non-citizens are taken off the ballots. They're screaming about it. Why? They can't vote. They shouldn't vote. You said that's nothing to worry about. North Carolina purged 338,000 duplicates, people that were dead, people that no longer resided in North Carolina, and people who were not U.S. citizens voting, and people who couldn't confirm their voting voting record. You had Arizona just purged 90,000 alone. So the Democrats are offering challenges, and we should be cognizant that there is going to be a lot of legal fights going through, unless Trump overwhelmingly performs. I mean, if he does a Reagan-esque thing, which is possible. I mean,
Facebook and
depending on how
Google
bad Kamala does.
created a nonprofit called Oversight Board in
Again, we can watch the
anticipation of
early
claims of
returns and
election
see
fraud
those
and
markers,
denials.
see how they that gap narrows. If it starts to narrow, then there's a chance that Trump could have a nice victory. But I know in Oregon, Portland in particular, this one's ironic. Some of you may get upset. Not that Trump would ever win Portland, but if you look at what the election committee decided to do over there, you can Google this news story. This is actually fact. This is how this should be election interference, and people should go to jail. They actually left Donald Trump and J.D. Vance off of the pamphlet book. They put everybody else out there, Jill Stein, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, on the pamphlet book to give you the indications. Just a book that goes with your ballot, a pamphlet that talks about every candidate that you are eligible to vote for in your area. So it would be everything from your dog catcher to the president. And ironically, for the people of Portland, there is blank spaces where J.D. Vance and Donald Trump would be, and no information on it, right there in front of you. And it is clearly a violation of election laws. There's so many things wrong with what Portland just did that it's asinine. And here's how we know.
We're
The
the
fact
heads
that
of our
citizens were
military
posting it
and
on
doing
their
what
Facebook,
America
their
must
Twitter,
always
their
CPS
social
faces
media.
a challenge.
And then news
How
stories
to keep
locally were
open
picking this up
low
going, wait a minute,
enrollment schools.
how did this
We know we had at
how
least
does it
100
that
schools,
everybody else is on here with their own bios,
at least
their
100
campaigns, their
200
websites,
students.
etc., and all the information
Right now,
about
you're
it.
saying
However, you left off J.D. Vance and Donald J.
potentially
Trump
have less than
off of
200 students.
this information
Yes, sir.
booklet that is
CPS
supposed
faces
to
a
accompany per their fucking rules every ballot that's sent out. So yes, there is a lot that Democrats are doing, and particularly political operatives. And so, securing elections and
How
having
to
election
keep open
integrity seems to
low
be
enrollment
paramount.
schools.
And it seems
We
that
know
the
we have at
Democrats
least
only
100
want to be able to
schools
do
between
it
high schools and
if
elementary
it leans in their
schools
favor.
that are probably
Otherwise,
at least,
evidently in Portland, they will cheat to win.
These people.
They did that in New York also. I got one in the mail the other day.
Did it have Trump and Vance on it?
No Trump and
No, it doesn't have it. These people are pieces of shit, and the part that's so frustrating, Brad, is that these situations are not federal. And I'm not saying I want to federalize elections, but it is very frustrating when you have Aram coming up and saying, look, we just looked at all the registry of all the voter frauds, and there's 3 in the whole state. I mean, this doesn't exist. You're crazy. You're insane. Why do you keep saying this? You're a purveyor of misinformation, blah, 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 blah. The fact is that these individual election commissions hold all of the power, and then when the election actually happens, they hold all of the evidence, and they refuse to give it up time and time again. And the most, look at Fulton County. Look at what happened in Arizona, in Maricopa County. Those motherfuckers refused for months and months and months to give any of the election information to the actual auditors. Then they refused to give them the codes to the actual machines. Then they agreed to give them the codes and gave them the wrong codes, and wouldn't actually let them look at the individual machines and the ballots. They control everything, and then the American public is demonized for wondering, hey, I don't care if the Democrat even won. I just actually want to know what the real results of the election. I want to know what my fellow Americans are thinking, and yet we've been gaslit for 4+ years on this issue, and I'm fucking sick of it. And the last thing about the Democrats, I think it's probably the most frustrating and aggravating thing, is how they pretend to be purveyors of democracy and then do everything in their fucking power to limit and mitigate democracy at every turn. with Kamala being the candidate, all the way down to taking Trump off the ballot in multiple states and trying to destroy democracy at every single level. It's so fucking frustrating. I almost, at this point, I used to, at the beginning of Clubhouse, I used to actually care and want to hear and listen to the other side and make, agreements between the two. But at this point, I just want to fucking kill them politically. I want to crush them. And then about 6 months to a year later, say, all right, come on, let's go make this country better together.
Hey, can I jump in here?
Yes, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah.
Where did Alan go?
Okay, something weird happened. Okay, I'm back.
No, your vibrating.
Did your life alert badge go off?
What?
Did your life alert badge go off?
You're echoing quite badly. I don't know if you want to swipe out.
It's because KK was off mute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's two things I want to say. First, I just want to read a quote. And despite the final tally in the inauguration and the situation we find ourselves in, I do have one very affirmative statement to make. We won. That was Stacey Abrams. I have a lot more like that of Democrats contesting the vote either in 2020 or 2016. So what you were just saying, Ricky and Brad, it is absolutely infuriating. But I do want to say, I know Love is talking about this, and other people say, well, there isn't any real difference between the candidates, and it's all one big machine. And as someone who used to embrace that thought process and outlook myself for many years, I certainly understand it. But I will say this both to you, Love, and then to anyone else holding that position who's in the room. Yes, that may be true by and large, but usually those differences can come down to maybe $5,000 to $10,000 a year for the average person. And that's a lot of money if you're making $60,000 a year. I mean, I can tell you there are certain laws that passed in California that, well, some of them maybe cost me $3,000 a year. And certainly Bidenomics and the disaster he's had with the economy has probably cost me about $5,000 just in increased prices for gas and food and for everything else. But I'll tell you something else. If we start to look at, and this is for me personally, if we look at the totality of what the
This will governments tax their citizens at such egregious rates, the least election commissions do
policies would have
is
been,
run their own elections and
we're
so
talking,
Alex,
we're into the tens of thousands and over six
we're
figures
living
of
in
what these policies have cost
highly
me.
controlled.
So yeah, I get it. Yeah, with the big picture issues and
Truth
the
is right in front of us.
globalist agenda and all of that, yeah, maybe they're all the same. But when you drill down into the policies that each party promotes, there is a difference. There is a difference. So that's why I say, yeah, I understand your viewpoint, but let's not go too hard on that. So anyways, I said my shtick. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
Love, we're going to get back. Excuse me, Love. I want to get into finishing some of this audio. We only have like maybe 6 minutes left. There's only 2 more questions, and then we can kind of
go back to whatever conversation we would like to have. So if you could just pause, please, I appreciate it. Stand by.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said. Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands. Okay, this attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the number one threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel,